Thank you for watching or listening to this free podcast of the Young Turks. We want to make sure that you get some portion of the show every day, but if you want the full show, which is actually 5 segments, come become a member and support independent media as well. tytnetwork.com/join. Meanwhile, enjoy the free podcast. We've got a giant show ahead for you guys. It is in fact the Young Turks. I am in fact your host, Cenk. Will I be doing an epic Told You segment? Momentarily. Hold. In fact, tell all your friends, neighbors, and Randy Gonzalez right now. Go share the stream right now, because in about a minute, I'm going to unleash. It's going to be awesome. Of course, it's on Rex Tillerson. But later in the program, the House so-called Intelligence Committee says that there was no collusion between Russia. And in fact, it's not, of course, the committee. It's just the Republicans on the committee. I'm going to unload on that. That's going to be fun. Bloop, bloop, bloop. We've got UFOs later in the show. Literally. Donald Trump's trying to sneak in a racist nominee. We caught him. That's later in the program. Almost no one's talking about that. And I think that's a really important and interesting story. And then last night I interviewed Ken Bone. All the members could see that live. So that's tytnetwork.com/join to become a member and get all the shows commercial free. So anyway, and Ken Bone, true to his character, has a podcast where he has a segment called What's Good? Okay, well, in an ode to Bone, we're going to do a What's Good segment on Joe Biden a little bit later in the program. You're going to enjoy that. So nothing but a giant show ahead for you guys. Go.
We need to talk about a relatively new show called the Republic, or UNFTR. As a Young Turks fan, you already know that the government, the media, and corporations are constantly peddling lies that serve the interests of the rich and powerful. But now there's a podcast dedicated to unraveling those lies, debunking the conventional wisdom. In each episode of the Republic, or UNFTR, the host delves into a different historical episode or topic that's generally misunderstood or purposely obfuscated by the so-called powers that be, featuring in-depth research, razor-sharp commentary, and just the right amount of vulgarity. The UNFTR podcast takes a sledgehammer to what you thought you knew about some of the nation's most sacred historical cows. But don't just take my word for it. The New York Times described UNFTR as consistently compelling and educational, aiming to challenge conventional wisdom and upend the historical narratives that were taught in school. For as the great philosopher Yoda once put it, you must unlearn what you have learned. And that's true whether you're in Jedi training or you're uprooting and exposing all the propaganda and disinformation you've been fed over the course of your lifetime. So search for UNFTR in your podcast app today and get ready to get informed, angered, and entertained all at the same time.
Oh, I forgot to tell you guys when to switch to Told You. You guys got Told You in there? We're going to, oh God, how do we not have that graphic? All right, see if we can get that sidebar in a panic because we're doing that story first. Yeah, I'm saying it on air. Everything's going to be okay, all right? Jesus is my co-pilot. Let's see if we can do that. So Jesus, when we get to videos 3 through 5, if we have gotten that sidebar, that would be lovely, okay? Go, go, go. All right. Rex Tillerson is out. Oh, here we go.
Oops.
Well, that's true too, but I meant.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Yeah. Down goes Rex. Down goes Rex. Down goes Rex. Okay, is this something to celebrate? Well, kind of. Rex Tillerson started out as a bad guy. Continued as a bad guy throughout, but at the end, a little bit of a saving grace. So he was the former CEO of ExxonMobil. He was picked as the Secretary of State for reasons that I'm going to explain to you in a second. In fact, I explained it to you 5 days ago in a prediction that I made about how Rex Tillerson would be out very, very soon, as you'll see, right? But we were told by Donald Trump that Rex Tillerson was not going to be out. Just a couple of months ago, he tweeted this. The media has been speculating that I fired Rex Tillerson or that he would be leaving soon. Fake news. He's not leaving, and while we disagree on certain subjects, I call the final shots. We work well together, and America is highly respected again. Why does the president have to put in brackets, I call the final shots? You thin-skinned clown, everyone knows that. You are so deeply insecure. But back then, after Rex Tillerson, no, it's outrageous. Of course, I'm not going to fire him. We're not in discussions over that. Now, today, as he fired him, listen to what Trump says in the middle of this explanation of why he fired Rex Tillerson. Watch.
I've worked with Mike Pompeo now for quite some time. Tremendous energy, tremendous intellect. We're always on the same wavelength. The relationship has been very good, and that's what I need as Secretary of State. I wish Rex Tillerson well, and I'm really at a point where we're getting very close to having the cabinet and other things that I want. Rex and I have been talking about this for a long time. We got along actually quite well, but we disagreed on things. When you look at the Iran deal, I think it's terrible. I guess it was okay. I wanted to either break it or do something, and he felt a little bit differently. So we were not really thinking the same. And, you know, I wish Rex a lot of good things. I think he's going to be very happy. I think Rex will be much happier now.
Well, I agree with that last part. Who wouldn't be happier leaving the insanity of the Donald Trump administration and his nonstop harassment and changing of his mind and berating of his own officials? I mean, it is absolute madness. But did you notice in the middle there, he said, Rex and I have been talking about this for a long time. Wait a minute, I thought you tweeted that it was fake news that you guys were talking about it. Look, about the millionth lie in a row from Donald Trump. Who would have guessed it? Now, he says it was partly about Iran. I'm going to expose that lie in a second, okay? But first, let's just note the Washington Post says, in fact, President Trump ousted Secretary of State Rex Tillerson and replaced him with CIA Director Mike Pompeo, orchestrating a major change to his national security team. So Pompeo's in, Tillerson's out. I wonder if anyone predicted this about 5 days ago. Well, let's find out. Now, as usual, I have a fun prediction for you guys, and I will say it ahead of time, and you'll get to see if I'm right or wrong. I believe Rex Tillerson will leave the administration very soon. So tick-tock, tick-tock. 5 days later. So if you notice, I said very soon, and of course, I said it ahead of time. Look, let me just pause here to say something really important about my fun predictions. Yeah, it's entertaining, it's fun. I think I got a pretty good record. You can check YouTube, it goes back 12 years, right? But that's not why I do it. I do it because I want you to understand that we're not Monday morning quarterbacking it. So when I tell you why it's going to happen, later people will say, oh no, it was for other reasons. I want you to know ahead of time that the reason I'm calling it is because people will try to deny the real reason that it happened. Now, if I was full of it, well, my predictions wouldn't come true and that person would not be leaving office, right? But he did leave office. The reason I predicted it 5 days ago is because I wanted you to know the real reason why he's leaving. So the real reason is not reported in any of this press. It's that ExxonMobil had a deal with Russia to do oil exploration. It was a $500 billion deal, but the revenue could equal $9 trillion. And I explained that to you last week. And I said ExxonMobil canceled the deal. Once that deal was canceled with Rosneft, the Russian oil company, Rex Tillerson's reign was over as Secretary of State. The rest was just playing out the string. That's why I was in a hurry to make that prediction as soon as I saw the ExxonMobil news, because I knew that it was a matter of time. So let me show you that part of the prediction here as well. Now that the ExxonMobil deal is not going to happen with Rosneft, he has no reason to stay. The whole point of him going there was to lift the sanctions and do this deal. Now, as I explained then, and as I explained over a year ago when he was first appointed, you don't randomly pick the CEO of ExxonMobil to do a job he's never done before, that he has no experience in, which is Secretary of State. He's never worked in any government, in any foreign relations, never done any of that. You don't pick that guy out of a weird coincidence. You do it because ExxonMobil had a deal, okay, with Russia. Now that that deal is not relevant, there's no reason for Tillerson to be there. And that's exactly what happened here. So now there is one part that I got a little wrong. Now you'll see that most of the stuff I said here at the end also came to fruition. But the part that's a little off is actually important. And I want to talk about that and its ramifications. But first, let me show you the ending of that video from last week. Rex Tillerson wanted huge deals for ExxonMobil where he worked. Now that he's not going to get that, he's going to leave. And at the time, they will say, "Oh no, he wants to spend more time with his family, and he disagreed with Trump on some trifling issue that's not really the issue at hand." But he is gone. He's gone because Exxon's not doing the deal anymore. So the part that was again correct was a misdirection on why. So Trump mentioned Iran. You'll see in the Washington Post later they mentioned North Korea. I'll get to that in a second. But the part that's a little off is that I thought Tillerson would leave because the whole point was to get that $1 trillion deal for his ex-company, et cetera. But it turns out Trump fired him. To me, that is actually more important and more of a pressing issue today. So let me explain why, and let me explain the chronology of what happened. So apparently John Kelly calls Tillerson when he's on a diplomatic trip to Africa on Friday and says, "Hey, Rex, you might be getting a tweet from Trump soon." So now that's a heads up to his friend Rex Tillerson saying you might want to resign because Trump's about to fire you with a random tweet. Now, no other president ever fires anybody with a tweet, but Trump is Trump. So now Rex Tillerson does not resign. So then John Kelly's chief of staff then sends another message to Tillerson saying, "Trump's going to send the tweet. In other words, come on, dude, don't get embarrassed, resign." And Tillerson, I guess partly to his credit, is like, "No, if he's going to fire me, I demand that he have the courage to fire me." So he does not resign. And then in fact, Tillerson says, as you're going to see in a second, on Monday, the poisoning that happened in Britain, that was Russia, clearly Russia. Boom, hours later, he's fired. Okay, so it's definitely about Russia. It's not about Iran, it's not about North Korea, it's about Russia. No question about it. Now, Tillerson's playing cat and mouse with him there. He's like, "Oh, you're gonna fire me over Russia? Go ahead, big guy, fire me. In fact, I'll tell you it was clearly Russia who did the poisoning. Fine, okay, at least you had the courage to fire me because I'm not resigning to do your job." So why, if it's not Tillerson resigning because he cared about the ExxonMobil deal, why does Trump fire him? Because the back channel still exists. The Russians were furious with Tillerson. The Russians were furious that Exxon canceled the deal. I told you yesterday, I read you the quotes of Rosneft and the Russians saying, this deal, we shouldn't cancel it. And I also showed you that Exxon was the only company who had the know-how to be able to drill where the Russians need to drill. So when Exxon canceled the deal, the Russians were furious. So Tillerson had to go. And that is why Tillerson is sniping at the Russians on his way out. Trump, as this story is playing out, appears to still be taking direction in live time from the Russians. That's amazing. So let me give you the rest of the drama here. So Trump says what he said that we showed you about Tillerson's exit. Officially, he put out a long statement bragging about Pompeo coming to State Department, Haspel, who will be replacing him at CIA. And at the very end, just has one little note on Tillerson. It says this: "Finally, I want to thank Rex Tillerson for his service. A great deal has been accomplished over the last 14 months, and I wish him and his family well." And that's it. So normally they do big thank yous back and forth. Tillerson has a press conference where he doesn't thank Trump at all. People think that's big drama. I don't think so. He was fired. Why would he thank him? Anyway, and then Tillerson takes a parting shot at Russia again in the press conference today. These are veiled comments, but I think if you know the whole story, it's very clear what's going on back and forth here. So now the Washington Post gives the nonsense reason. Look, I'm not blaming the Washington Post and the mainstream media too much. It's harder for them to connect the dots. They have to say, well, look, it would be nice if they made an effort at it, but instead they go with the standard line that the government gave them. So the president, who has long clashed with Tillerson, they explain, who he believes is too establishment in his thinking, felt it was important to make the change now as he prepares for possible high-stakes talk with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, as well as upcoming trade negotiations, 3 White House officials said. So look, that's the Washington Post saying, these are what the White House officials said. I think that they should go deeper into the story, but why is the White House saying that? Now look, they just said North Korea and Iran and trade deals and to establishment. In other words, squirrel, 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 squirrel. Which one is it? What was so bad enough that you had to publicly fire your Secretary of State, which, again, if you don't follow politics closely, that's a giant move. That's an earthquake. If Obama or George W. Bush or any of those guys had to fire their Secretary of State, not resign, not amicably part ways and talk about how I'm spending time with the family, etc., that's gigantic. It ain't over small disagreements on these other issues. Is he a little too establishment? Is he not establishment? It's over the mother lode or the motherland, if you will. It's the one unspoken thing that they keep making references to, but not actually stating. It's over the Russian ExxonMobil deal. He's the former CEO of ExxonMobil. When is it going to get through people's heads? That's what it was about. Okay, so now there's the issue of the poisoning. Now, I told you Tillerson took some shots. I'm going to explain those in a second to you, but I want to be clear. This is about the ex-Russian agent in the UK. So on Monday, the British Prime Minister, Theresa May, said it was highly likely that the Russian government was behind the attack that has left Sergei Skripal and his daughter Yulia critically ill, calling it, quote, an unlawful use of force by the Russian state against the United Kingdom. When Sarah Huckabee Sanders was asked about it in a press conference yesterday, she answered with, and they asked her, look, no, okay, I got it. You condemned the attacks. Everybody condemns the attacks. But was it Russia? Well, we are with our friends in the UK. In other words, she wouldn't say it. Finally, today, they were forced to say it. I'll get to that in a second. But how do they know it was Russia? The UK government has said it has identified the nerve agent used on Skripal on March 4th as being from the Novichok family. Novichok nerve agents were developed by Russia during the Cold War and are highly toxic, as much as 10 times more deadly than the lethal XV nerve agent. So anyone in the intelligence community knows if it's this Novichok agent, that means it was the Russians. They're the ones who developed it, and everybody says almost no one else has their hands on this particular nerve agent. And hence, as NBC reports, hours before being ousted as Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson called the poisoning of an ex-Russian spy and his daughter with a military-grade nerve agent in the UK, quote, a really egregious act that appears to have, quote, clearly come from Russia. Now, at the time, Sarah Huckabee Sanders and Donald Trump were saying, Russia? What's Russia? Part of what they're angry about is Rex Tillerson forces their hand. Their own Secretary of State says, come on, it was clearly Russia. Why won't you, which then begs the question of the rest of the White House. Why won't you say it? Theresa May says it, you keep waiting. Your own Secretary of State says it, and you keep waiting. And it forces their hand, which it did today. But I want to give you more details on what Tillerson said. In a statement released by the State Department on Monday evening, before Tillerson was fired, Tillerson called Russia, quote, an irresponsible force of instability in the world, acting with open disregard for the sovereignty of other states and the life of their citizens. And he wasn't done. He said that he was, quote, extremely concerned about Russia. And that's before he knew that Russia was going to fire him. Okay, and then finally he said, it certainly will trigger a response. I'll leave it at that. But the Russians did not leave it at that because apparently they sent a message to Trump to get rid of Rex Tillerson, and hours later he did. Look, you can say, oh, Cenk, now that's too much, saying that the Russians ordered this. They wanted that Exxon deal. The Exxon deal gets canceled. I predict Tillerson's gone. Tillerson is gone within 5 days. He takes a parting shot over and over again at Russia before he's fired and after he's fired. And you're telling me there's no connection to Russia? No, it was their philosophical differences about how to do negotiations with North Korea. Trump has philosophical differences? Please, come on. So finally, after the British government says over and over that it's the Russians, they pause and delay and delay. And today, Trump administration finally says, and this is reported by Mediaite, or the White House says, President Trump agreed with Prime Minister May that the government of the Russian Federation must provide unambiguous answers regarding how this chemical weapon developed in Russia came to be used in the United Kingdom. But even in that official statement, they didn't say it was Russia. They just said, well, there are questions that need to be answered by the Russians in an unambiguous way. In fact, Trump is asked about it, And again, listen to how he parsed the words here. Even as he's saying it's Russia, he's not quite saying it. Watch.
I'm speaking to Theresa May today. It sounds to me like it would be Russia based on all of the evidence they have. I don't know if they've come to a conclusion. It sounds to me like they believe it was Russia, and I would certainly take that finding as fact. We're speaking with Theresa May today, and as soon as we get the facts straight, if we agree with them, we will condemn Russia or whoever it may be.
Even there, he says, we will condemn Russia if we agree with them or whoever it might be. This guy works for Putin. He's every opportunity to criticize Russia, he will not take it. I mean, North Korea talked about their nuclear button, and he went ballistic on them. My button's bigger than yours. We're going to destroy you. We're going to, pulverize you, etc. Recently, Putin did a video showing Russian missiles landing in Florida, saying, you better not mess with us. No tweets, not one comment from Trump, who loves the fight, every other person. They passed new sanctions on Russia. They're supposed to implement them in January. We're in March. Trump won't do it. Nope, I'm not going to put the new sanctions in. Now, Russia wants Tillerson gone. All of a sudden, Tillerson's gone. And guys, look, I'm telling you, for the last time, I don't do the Monday morning quarterback because it's easy to say afterwards, oh, well, that's a theory that you've got, but I don't know about that. I tell you ahead of time because that's what the real deal is. So that if it turns out that the circumstances unfold as I told you, it's because of that reason. So, yes, the back channel with Russia continues to this day. Trump, almost under penalty of law, will not criticize Russia. They have a deal. It is the most obvious thing in the world. It's right in front of you. Hopefully, it's also right in front of Mueller. Look, there's two different things. One is it real? And the other is, can it be proven? I think based on the evidence we already have, it is overwhelming that Trump has some deal with Russia. Okay, now, can they prove it? And if you're charged with something, that's one standard of proof. If the president is charged with something, it's a different standard of proof. So Mueller has to have overwhelming direct evidence of some sort of deal. Will he be able to get that with all the people that he has flipped, like Rick Gates and George Nader and Papadopoulos and Flynn, and the list goes on and on. That we're going to see soon. But I think that he will get him because Mueller is smart and Trump is not. And when he does, finally we'll have the last act of this drama. Okay, now I want to show you what Rex Tillerson said on his way out. So Rex Tillerson, fired by Donald Trump. He pointedly refused to resign and then was fired, which again is not unprecedented, but incredibly rare, especially for a position as high as Secretary of State. So then he's going to give a press conference, which is also weird and rare, that as a person has been fired, he now has to go and give a press conference about all the people he's thanking. So first, he makes it clear that, in fact, he will be leaving. Let's watch.
I received a call today from the President of the United States at a little after noontime from Air Force One. And I've also spoken to White House Chief of Staff Kelly to ensure we have clarity as to the days ahead. What is most important is to ensure an orderly and smooth transition during a time that the country continues to face significant policy and national security challenges. As such, effective at the end of the day, I'm delegating all responsibilities of the Office of the Secretary to Deputy Secretary of State Sullivan. My commission as Secretary of State will terminate at midnight, March the 31st.
So let me interpret a couple of things in there. His term is supposed to end March 31st. We're not at March 31st. He says, I'm leaving midnight tonight. In other words, I'm out. I'm gone, man. I don't want any piece of this. Then the reason he said he got a call from the president is because reports are from inside the State Department that the first time he officially knew that he was fired was in a tweet. So that, again, is very non-standard, to say the least. But there he's clarifying, no, I got a call from the president, and he fired me. So, and then that happened. Okay, so then he goes on to thank people for 6 long minutes. And one person he did not mention in those 6 minutes was President Donald Trump. So then, of course, Washington goes into overdrive on the snub heard around the world. Oh my God, he snubbed him, he snubbed him. Of course he snubbed him. He just got fired by the guy. What is he supposed to say? Like, now, it was an honor to be fired by President Trump. Now, remember, there was an earlier report about how Tillerson thought Trump is a moron. In fact, an effing moron. And he never, like, when he was first brought in, everything was hunky-dory. He's like, wow, I'm going to be Secretary of State. This is amazing. It's an honor, wonderful, all that stuff. He spent some time with Donald Trump, and he's like, okay, this guy's a moron. I don't know. I got to get out of here, right? And at that point, he realizes what a clown that Donald Trump is. Eventually, that clown fires him. Why in the world would he thank that guy? Of course he's not going to thank him. It would be preposterous to thank him. So at least he's not a standard politician in that way. And he didn't humiliate himself in that way on his way out. So I respect that. So now, more importantly, at the end, he's going to take one more shot at Russia here. Now remember, Tillerson used to be great friends with Putin, the leader of Rosneft, which is the largest Russian oil company. He had gotten a medal from Putin, and they were on great terms. And in fact, I believe he was brought in because of the deal between ExxonMobil and Russia. So, but since then, things have gone sour, and Tillerson has not been able to lift the old sanctions. And just last week, ExxonMobil announced that, no, we are not going to do the deal with Russia anymore. So Russia is now irate at Rex Tillerson. And so he comes out on Monday, right before he's fired, and says the Russians are the ones who did the poisoning of the ex-agent of theirs in the UK. Now, that was not sanctioned by the Trump administration. Apparently, they were furious about that because Trump basically works for Putin. And all of you thinking that's hyperbole, I'll see you guys in the indictments, and I expect apologies at that time. So, and you're still not seeing it? Okay, anyway, so now Tillerson, because he knows what's going on behind the scenes, takes one more shot at Russia on his way out.
At TYT, we frequently talk about all the ways that big tech companies are taking control of our online lives, constantly monitoring us and storing and selling our data. But that doesn't mean we have to let them. It's possible to stay anonymous online and hide your data from the prying eyes of big tech. And one of the best ways is with ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN hides your IP address, making your activity more difficult to trace and sell to advertisers. ExpressVPN also encrypts 100% of your network data to protect you from eavesdroppers and cyber criminals. And it's also easy to install. A single mouse click protects all your devices. But listen, guys, this is important. ExpressVPN is rated #1 by CNET and Wired magazine. So take back control of your life online and secure your data with a top VPN solution available, ExpressVPN. And if you go to expressvpn.com/TYT, you can get 3 extra months for free with this exclusive link just for TYT fans. That's expressvpn.com/TYT. Check it out today.
Let's go to that. That's video 9. No, sorry, video 6.
And much work remains to respond to the troubling behavior and actions on the part of the Russian government. Russia must assess carefully as to how its actions are in the best interest of the Russian people and of the world more broadly. Continuing on their current trajectory is likely to lead to greater isolation on their part, a situation which is not in anyone's interest.
So he's like, look, man, this isn't going to work out for any of you guys. Now, one last thing that's unspoken here, and no one else is pointing out. Tillerson's a crafty guy. You don't get to be the CEO of ExxonMobil by not being bright. Now, you can say other things about how he got to be the CEO of ExxonMobil. You might say lacking a certain degree of morals as the fossil fuel companies light up the world with climate change, etc. So don't get me wrong, I'm not praising Rex Tillerson in that sense, but he's no dummy. You don't get to rise up politically with an ExxonMobil if you're not bright. So part of what he's doing is taking a parting shot at Trump and Russia. But the other thing that he's doing is basically saying, man, when this stuff goes down, I ain't got nothing to do with it, man. Remember at the end, I was against Russia. Remember all the things I said against Russia. When you hand out the indictments, I don't want any piece of that. He's a crafty guy, And that's what he was saying there that I think is clear, at least to me, apparently not as clear to the rest of the media. Okay, so one last part of this Tillerson story, then we'll take a break and I'll tell you about the replacements. Let me tell you about one other guy. Let's go to the next story. Okay. So in the midst of Rex Tillerson getting fired, there was an undersecretary at the State Department. His name is Steve Goldstein, and he pointed out something that was true. Ooh, that's not a good idea in the Trump administration. So let's go to that story. Ken Meyer reporting at Mediaite. Shortly after Tillerson's ouster was publicly confirmed, State Department Undersecretary of Public Diplomacy Steve Goldstein released a statement saying Tillerson never spoke to Trump about today's decision and had every intention of remaining in his position. Now, that's uncomfortable for the Trump administration. They wanted to pretend that Trump was a decent person and actually called Tillerson instead of just sending a public tweet and having him find out that way. Well, when Goldstein exposes that lie, they're not happy about that. As Meyer continues to explain, this directly challenges the notion that the White House told the secretary he would be phased out. And it also rebukes what Trump said about how he and Tillerson have spoken about this for, quote, a long time. The tweet might have been previewed by Chief of Staff John Kelly earlier Friday and Saturday. That's reporting out today as well. So Tillerson might have known that it was coming, but Trump never actually did the decent thing of picking up the phone and telling him. No, he just sent the tweet after Tillerson made the comments about how Russia almost certainly poisoned their ex-agent in the United Kingdom. And then Trump sends out the tweet, later wants to pretend that he did the right thing. Goldstein exposes that. So what happens to Goldstein? Associated Press, breaking. Officials, White House fires top Tillerson aide who contradicted account of Secretary of State's dismissal. And then Goldstein confirms it. So Dave Clark at AFP reporting, Undersecretary of State Steve Goldstein confirms he was sacked. Quote, "This has been the honor of my lifetime. I look forward to getting some rest." And he will. So God help you if in the Trump administration you ever make the mistake of telling the truth. All right, we'll be right back. You're right in the middle of this podcast. We got another great segment coming up for you. If you'd like the full show, which is actually 5 segments, go to tytnetwork.com/join. You become a member, you support the show, you support independent media, and you get the whole 2-hour show ad-free every day. Let's go do it now. All right, Cenk Uygur and Anna Kasparian with you guys, Young Turks. Some tweets and then some stories. The Young Feminist says, Cenk randomly saying Rochester on TYT Live made my day, assuming he meant my Rochester. Well, if you live in New York, I meant your Rochester. If not, oops. Carrie G says, in other racists in this administration, color me shocked. In other news, they're at this round. Josh Lasagna, who has an awesome name, says, LOL, wait, he used the Orientals in this day and age. Jesus Christ.
He's a Georgetown professor. Amazing.
And you know, why is he a Georgetown professor? Because a lot of those top schools, like the media, like so many other things that are in power in this country, bend over backwards to pretend that Republicans and Democrats are equal and that conservatives and liberals are equal. Well, I mean, one side says it's a complicated issue that's nuanced and takes some sophistication to understand and actually study. The other side says, it's race, right? And I think they're equal. I think he needs to be a professor at Georgetown. Okay. Anyway, one last one. Trey Beatty says, whoa, boy, this story on William Otis is a depressing example of what this administration does while the mainstream media focuses people's attention on all the crazy. Proud member of a news media organization that covers real issues. Thank you, Trey. And you guys make it possible. tytnetwork.com/join. Otherwise, we'd have nothing.
You know what? We do cover the real issues, and we're about to cover the realest issue of them all.
So we decided that we're going to have a little bit of fun in Anna's segments to start off with. So I hope you enjoy these, and then we'll get to some hard-hitting stuff.
Yes. All right. Donald Trump Jr. visited the state of Pennsylvania, the great state of Pennsylvania, in order to campaign for the candidate Saccone, Rick Saccone to be specific. And while he was doing this, campaign work, he had a bunch of incredibly important interviews, including an interview with a chocolate Easter bunny. I love all of this. I love every part of this. Okay, so first, let me explain why this story caught my attention to begin with. I thought that a local news reporter thought it would be cute to interview him as if the Easter Bunny was interviewing him, because that's what local news does. Local news reporters will walk toward the camera as they're doing their stand-up for no reason. They're just walking toward the camera. Or they'll do all sorts of goofy things like imitate a bear attack, as if we don't know what a bear attack would look like. So I thought this was probably like a cute gimmicky thing that a local reporter was doing, but that is not the case. I'll tell you what this all was in just a second.
No, Anna, but you made a critical mistake there. Okay, it's because they don't realize those other things are goofy. They're not doing it on purpose. They're told by their news directors, if you walk towards the camera, people will take you more seriously. So we've talked about this on air before. I worked in local news. Ben Mankiewicz, our co-founder, worked in local news for a lot longer and more of this like local affiliate stuff, right?
Yeah.
And consultants would come in. First of all, they would tell them to talk like this, right? Why? Nobody talks like that, right? And once they told him, don't ever pick up a pen. And he's like, what if I need to write? Okay.
Wait, why shouldn't you pick up a pen?
Because, they had this convoluted nonsense thing about how it'll make you seem pensive and indecisive or something along those lines. I don't remember the whole story now. And he's like, no, it'll make you seem like a human who writes. And I'm on the news. I would care about the facts. I would need to use a utensil every once in a while to write them down. Anyway, they're like, don't do that. And they teach you to say, earlier today, there was a fire here. Well, then you should have been there earlier today, because there's nothing behind you right now, okay? So when they do that stuff and they reenact the bear attack, they're serious. They're like, and then the bear approached like this. I know it's really like humiliating, but you would take an extraordinary local news person to be, by the way, news director. The reporters, I'm sure they would love to do it some of them would, but the news director's like, oh, don't do that. That'll ruin our credibility. Dude, what credibility?
Well, wait, which behavior would ruin their credibility? The Easter Bunny stunt?
The Easter Bunny.
Okay, so to be fair, the Easter Bunny stunt was not a stunt. A local news reporter did not do this on purpose. There was a different reporter by the name of Andrew Rush. He writes for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. And from the angle in which he was standing, he noticed that he could take a picture that made it appear as though the Easter Bunny was interviewing Donald Trump Jr. So he took that picture, posted it online, went viral, and people made memes out of it. I just thought it was funny. And my assumptions, unfortunately, were wrong. I kind of wish a local news reporter did this.
I wish they were allowed to have that kind of fun. They might have better ratings.
Yeah.
Anyway, credit to Andrew Rush, who took that hilarious picture.
Yes.
And are we going to turn this into how the Trump family is a disaster? No, that's for other stories. This was just fun.
This was just fun. Okay, one other quick heartwarming story. This is more heartwarming than fun. Recently, Joe Biden went to the movies, and after he left the movies, he ran into a homeless person who he apparently gave some sort of note to and had a conversation with. Now, little did he know there was someone else watching and someone taking photos of him as he was having this conversation with a homeless man. And the picture ended up online and everyone reacted to it. So I want to share some of those comments with you. First of all, Caleb Baca, who is the person who took the photo, says the following: I'm not exactly sure what he gave the homeless man, but he appeared to write something down on a piece of paper inside the movie theater, which he then proceeded to give the homeless man outside. And a bunch of different people, both public figures and private citizens, commented on this on Twitter. And, everyone pretty much agrees. Politics aside, Biden's always been a decent man and a good man. And so John Aravosis tweeted the following. This was my favorite tweet in regard to the picture. Some men pay off porn stars while others stop to get to know a homeless man.
Yeah, I love that. My favorite version of that, several people said it that way, is Patrick Tomlinson said, When he thought no one was watching, Trump cheated on every one of his 3 wives. When he thought no one was watching, Joe Biden comforted a homeless man. I think that is quite telling of their character, at least.
Yeah, it was a heartwarming, nice thing to see, especially in the middle of what's happening in the country. There's so much cruelty, there's so much anger, so much divisiveness, and it's nice to see acts of kindness, break that apart a little bit.
So it was originally shared on Facebook by businessman Paul Equal, and he wrote in that Facebook post, "Character is about what you do when no one is watching." So look, there is the awe part of this story. Like I looked at the picture, I was like, oh. And there's another part of that, which is that he had gone to the movies with his granddaughter. So he takes his granddaughter to the movies, then comes out, sees a homeless man, and spends time talking to him and comforting him. That's a double awe, okay?
Yeah.
And so that's good enough, but I don't want anybody to get confused. That doesn't mean that you have to agree with all of Joe Biden's policies.
No, now you're a shill for Joe Biden. I knew it. You sellout, you establishment shill. No, I mean, this is aside from politics. It's a person doing a kind thing. Let's all move on with our lives.
Okay, but before we move on, I want to talk more about Joe Biden because he's an interesting cat, okay? I'm just going to tell a couple of fun stories real quick. So Joe Biden will talk to anyone. So that's part of this too. I remember my first interaction with him was in 1988 when I was a freshman at Penn, and I had just gotten there, and I was going to the bookstore to buy some books and shirts and stuff. And I was a political geek even back then. And Biden was just running for office, running for president. And he's at the bookstore, and he's a pretty tall guy, and he's looking around. Does anybody recognize me? Does anybody recognize me? His son was also going to Penn at the time. And so I go up and I go, "Senator Biden, how you doing?" He's like, "Oh, great." And he comes and talks to me, et cetera. So look, you could say he's looking for attention, but you could also say that he cares about people. So he bothered to talk to me and have a real conversation. We engaged a little bit of policy talk, et cetera. And Biden's also been right on a lot of things. And so he was the guy who said we should have split Iraq into 3. I think that the creation of ISIS partly justified what he was saying. I agreed with him all throughout. He was the first one and not the only one, but among the few voices in Washington who recognized, hey, knuckleheads, in Iraq, there are 3 contingents, Sunnis, Shia, and Kurds, and they're never going to get along. And if you don't do something about it, it'll lead to worse conflict. And it did, and how that's partly how we got ISIS, et cetera. Now, that doesn't mean that Biden's right about everything, and in fact, there's a lot of things that I disagree with him now, and I wish he is kind of an average guy. He was the poorest senator, et cetera, but he stayed in Washington for so long. And so even though he's a good guy, I think he believes in some things that I think he could be so much more progressive on. So I wouldn't necessarily support him for president. But and he makes gaffes. But that was in the pre-Trump era when gaffes mattered. Right. Now gaffes might help you. I don't know.
I feel like gaffes only matter when it comes to liberals.
Yeah, that's right.
Because they can't shake it. They can't shake it the way the right wing does.
And I love the way he gives speeches. He'll lean in like he did at the National Convention, Democratic National Convention in 2016. But okay, guys, no, listen to me. This is not political. This is important. I love when Uncle Joe does that. It doesn't mean that he's the right candidate, but I will end on one small political point on that. So I see this and I am like, oh, Uncle Joe, right? And then of course pundits come in and go, now look, this is probably a rare situation where age doesn't matter. And I'm like, oh God, you ruined it.
Wait.
You're right.
What?
In other words, yes, he's as old as Bernie Sanders, but it's okay when it's Joe Biden. But those are the same pundits who will say Bernie Sanders is too old.
Oh, I didn't see that commentary.
Yeah.
And everyone just needs to shut up.
Just let him have a nice moment without ruining it.
I know, but we got into politics too. It's just a nice moment, people, you can compartmentalize those things. Like people can do good things outside of their political beliefs. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, some people can. Some people on the other side do terrible things outside of politics.
Yeah.
And inside of politics.
Okay, let's take a break. When we come back, let's talk about the serious stuff that's going on.
Thanks for watching or listening to this free version of the Young Turks podcast. You know that the full show is at tytnetwork.com/join. If you become a member, you get the full show ad-free. We love you for watching or listening. Either way, there's going to be a new free podcast tomorrow. You can keep on doing that. But if you want to get the full show ad-free, tytnetwork.com/join. Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk, and I'll see you soon.